Hi there, hello, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to our next session of reading Machiavelli's Discourses. Today, we're continuing our examination of Book 2 of the Discourses, looking at Chapter 8. Now, Chapter 8 is going to be, it's longer than, definitely much longer than the last chapter, and actually, but even longer than the other two chapters prior. So let's go look at it. The title is called The Causes Why People Leave Their Ancestral Places and Indulate the Countries of Others. Why do people leave where they're from and then flood, the countries of others? So, since the mode of proceeding in war observed by the Romans is reasoned of above, as is how the Tuscans were assaulted by the French. This is Discourses 2, 4 through 6. The French here is the Gauls, right? The French here are the Gauls. It does not seem to me alien to the matter to discuss the two kinds of war that are made. One is made through the ambition of princes or a republic, consuls who seek to propagate empire, such as the wars of Alexander the Great and those the Romans made, and those that one power makes with another every day. Okay, those are the two. Therefore, there's conquering and grading something else, and the other and those made the Greek, and those that one power makes against another power every day. These wars are dangerous, but they do not entirely expel the inhabitants of a province. For the obedience of the people alone is enough for the victor, and one often lets them live with their laws, and always with their homes and their goods. So therefore, this is both these wars. The one is propagating from an ambition of a prince or propagating of a republic, and therefore, like the Alexander the Great is the prince, and the republic were that of the Romans, and then the other one is the way of those that one power wages war another one, right? These are the two kinds of wars, right? Aggrandizement, ambition of a prince to aggrandize and propagate an empire, and the others, they just normally wage war against each other. These wars, now, I think both these two wars, they can what? They let the victor can just, people obey, and that's enough. Would live with their laws and their homes and their goods. The other kind of war is when the entire people, with all its families, removed from a place, necessitated by either famine or war, goes out to seek a new seat and a new province, not to command it like those above, but to possess it individually and expel or kill the ancient inhabitants of it. Okay? Now, in other words, that you're going from one place and now bringing your a plague, a famine, or maybe someone has waged war against you, and that your people are no longer safe. So now you flee to another place, and then you want to possess their place, and therefore you have to expel and kill the ancient inhabitants of that place. This war is very cruel and very frightful. Sallust reasoned about these wars at the end of the Jugurthine, right, where he says that once Jugurtha was conquered, the motion of the French who came into Italy was felt. Again, literally Sallust, the belief that the Jugurthine War, right, and paragraph 114, or Sallust Polybius' History, Book 2, and the chapter or section 21. Now, Jugurtha, he says that the Roman people combated all other races solely over whom would command. But they combated the French, the Gauls, always over the salvation of everyone. so that the fighting with the French was done in a different way. The question of when they fought, the Romans fought other people of all the other races. It was about who would command. But when they fought against the Gauls, it was about salvation of everyone, because the Gauls were going to come and loot and pollute, loot and take, and For it is enough for a prince or a republic that assaults a province to eliminate only those who command. But these populations must eliminate everyone, since they wish to live on what others were living on. So in other words, if you're just going to command the republic, or command the territory of the land, you just kill the leadership. And if you can benefit the followers, they'll follow you, right? You don't touch them too much. That's the whole point about what Machiavelli says about, if you don't touch their property, you let them live under the laws. If you can do that, then let them live under their laws and don't tax them that much, right? And they'll obey you as long as you extinguish the memory of their prince, right? But these people they want to live on their land and have to remove and kill you. So therefore, the Romans had 3 of these dangerous wars. The first was when Rome was taken. It was seized by the French, the Gauls, who had, as was said above, again, Discourse 2:4, right? Discourses 2, in Book 2 and Chapter 4, had taken Lombardy from the Tuscans and made it their seat, for which Titus Livy cites 2 causes, right? He cites 2 causes now, 5. This is Livy 5:33-34. The first was, as was said above, what was that they were attracted by the sweetness of the fruit and the wine of Italy, which they lacked in France. The second was that since the French kingdom had multiplied in men so much that they could no longer nourish themselves there, the princes of those places judged it was necessary for them, for a part of them, to go and seek new land. Right. So the French or the Gauls, they grew too big and they couldn't they couldn't survive. Their populations were too big and they couldn't everyone couldn't survive on the area they had, so they had to go conquer a new area. This decision being made, they elected Bellovinus and Sigovinus, 2 kings of the French, as captains of those who had to leave. So they elected 2 people and they had to leave. The Bellovinus came into Italy, and Sigovinus came into Spain. So they went into 2 things. They crossed the mountains, the Pyrenees, to go into Spain. So Sigovinus and the people who joined him and his tribe and his Gauche things went into Spain, and Bellovinus went into Italy, right? From the coming of the Bellovinus arose the Caesar of Lombardy, right? What they call Lombardy, the Tuscan area. And from that, the first war of the French made on Rome. After this was that which they made against the first Carthaginian war. In other words, so therefore, this is the Gaul, right? This is the first war, is the Gauls. But after this, they made, after the first Carthaginian war, when they killed more than 200,000 French between Piembio and Pisa. So this is from Polybius 2, 21 through 31, right? This moment, this thing. It happened in the first Carthaginian War, where they basically exterminated 200,000 French between Pinembo and Pisa. The third was taken when the Germans and the Combi came into Italy after conquering 7 Roman armies. they were conquered by Marius, right? Again, Livy summaries 63, 65, 67 through 68. Plutarch's Marius 16 to 27, right? This is the rise of Marius. Marius is the reformer of the armies, right? He'll achieve a great victory and he will reform the armies. The Romans thus won these three very dangerous wars, nor was less virtue necessary to win them. For it was seen that when Roman virtue was lacking, and their arms lost their ancient valor, that empire was destroyed by similar people, such as the Goths, the Vandals, and the like, who seized the whole Western Empire. So that when, at a later point in time, under the empire, right, the empire lost their virtue, and their virtue, Roman virtue, was lacking, and their arms were lost. Their arms lost their ancient valor, Republican traditions of the soldiery, and that were relying on basically local tribes to do this. They had no Roman virtue, no Roman traditions. This was why they were easily destroyed by such people as the Goths, the Vandals, and the like, right? Then they seized the Western Empire. And therefore the later empire would then explain what happens, and that's the conquest, and then the question is whether they conquest them and totally take them. Such people go out of their countries, as was said above, expelled by necessity. The necessity arises either from famine or from a war or oppression inflicted on them by their own country, such as they are constrained to seek new lands, right? So therefore there's three mechanisms: war, a famine, a war, or oppression of their own country on them, and therefore they force people to go find new lands. There's not enough land and not enough food for people there, so you go conquer war. And by the way, tribal hunter-gatherers and tribal people and not advanced agricultural people tended to you could only process so much land together until you had the agrarian revolution and understood enough that you could farm effectively. You had limits to how much people could have in a zone, and therefore, if there were too many people in here, you either would have you wouldn't have enough food to feed everyone, and therefore famine would emerge, right? Or you'd have to send people out, right? This is the classic problem, right? And they are a great number. Then when they enter with violence into the countries of others, and kill the inhabitants, take possessions of their goods, make a new kingdom, and change the province's name, as did Moses, example Moses, right, in the book of Joshua, right, and the people who seized the Roman Empire, again, the example of the barbarians who then seek the Roman Empire, and after the collapse of, 4th, 5th century AD, right, and 6th century AD. For the new names that are in Italy and the other provinces did not arise from anything other than having been thus named by the new occupants. What was called Gallia Cisalpina is Lombardy. France was called Gallia Transalpina, and is now named after the Franks, right? So it was Gauls, but then the Franks conquered the Gauls, right? As the people who have seized it were thus called. The Franks conquered it, right? Salvonia was called Illyria. So Slavonia was called Illyria. Hungary, Pannonia. Britannia. And many other provinces, the Angles conquered England, right? The Britannia, right? Many other provinces that had names, had changed names, which it would be tedious to tell, right? Moses also called that part of Syria seized by him Judea, And since I have said above that sometimes such people are expelled from their own seat by war, therefore they were constrained to seek new lands. I wish to bring up the example of the Musarians. Okay. The Musarians, a people in Syria of an antiquity. In other words, this people here, the Musarians, people in Syria, that was in Syria, since they heard the Hebrew peoples were coming and judged that they could not resist them, they thought it better to save themselves and leave their own country than lose themselves also in trying to save it, right? So therefore they heard that this Morazian heard that there were going to be, the Hebrews were coming into the Syria, and therefore they opted, they're going to lose themselves, that they were going to get, they wouldn't be able to stop the Hebrews, and therefore if they stayed and fight, they would lose themselves. So therefore they decided to flee, right? So they thought it better to save themselves and leave their own countries than to lose and trying to save it, right? They removed with their families and went from there into Africa, right? Where they placed their seed, expelling the inhabitants they found in those places. Thus those who had not been able to defend their own country were able to seize that of others, right? This is an example. They went from there to Africa, right? Precopus, who writes of the war that Belarussus made with the Vandals, who had seized Africa, reports that he read letters written on certain columns in palaces, these Mazuricians inhabited, that said, "We are Masaresan, who fled before the face of Joshua, the robber son of Nun." Again, this is quoting the Latin Procopius's Greek De Bello Vandals, right? Book 4, section 10. The Latin word used for Joshua is Jesus, which is also used for Yesu. So therefore, they ran away from. You translate that as Jesus, Joshua, the robber of a son of Nun. Hence appears the cause of their departure from Syria. These people, therefore, are very frightful, since they have been expelled by the ultimate necessity. And if they do not encounter good arms, they will never be contained. In other words, if you don't have good arms, you won't be able to contain them. But these fleeing, those who will fear someone who will exterminate them. Hold on. Throat is getting a little dry. But when those who are constrained to abandon their fatherland are not many, they are not so dangerous as people who were reasoned about, that we were reasoning about. For they cannot use so much violence, but must seize some place with art. And having seized it, maintain themselves there by ways of friends and confederates, right? So therefore, this is the... You don't have a lot of people. You have just only a few. You have to... You can't rely on numbers. You have to rely on some place with art skill or something. And having seized it, maintain themselves there by way of friends and confederates. Aeneas, Dido, and the Melassians, and the like are seen to have done so. All of those who are able to maintain themselves through the consent of their neighbors, where they settled. So therefore they come there. Aeneas, Dido, and the Macedonians they go someplace and they're welcomed by the people. They bring benefit. They bring something beneficial to them, and therefore they are, in other words, through the consent of their neighbors, where they settle there, and because their neighbors say, "Oh, that's beneficial," right? They're adding something beneficial, maybe because the land, they don't value that land, but these people can do something with it, right? Large people come out And almost all have come out from the country of Scythia, cold and poor places, okay? So large peoples come out, and almost all have come out from the country of Scythia, cold and poor places, because there are not very many men there, and the country is of a quality that cannot nourish them. They are forced to come out, having many things that expel them and nothing that retains them. And if it has not happened for 500 years that any of these people has inundated any country, it has arisen from many causes. Okay? First is the great evacuation that country made during the decline of their empire. So therefore, the first thing is that their empire or their thing was when more than 30 peoples came out. So different peoples that were there, that they came out. The second is that Germany and Hungary, from which these peoples also came out, have now improved their countries so that they can live there comfortably, so that they are not necessitated to change their place. So therefore, these people of this part, when you talk about Scythia, that now they don't have to leave, because the Germans and Hungary, that of Germany and Hungary, from which these people also came out, have improved their place, this country. They can live there comfortably, and they're not necessary to do this. On the other side, since they are very warlike men, they are like a bastion to hold back the Scythians who border them, so they do not presume they can conquer them or pass them by. So the Scythians are not, in other words, that the Germans and the Hungarians are warlike people, so they cannot easily, they can counter them. They can't simply just crush them, right? So they cannot presume they can conquer them or pass them by. The very great movements of the Tartars often occur when which are contained by the Hungarians and those of those of Poland, who often glorify themselves, saying that if it were not for their arms, Italy and the Church would have often felt the weight of the Tartar armies. I wish this to be enough as to the previous mentioned peoples. In other words, he said that again. He brings now the Tartars up, not the Scythians. He brings the last example is that the Tartars, and he says maybe that's also the explanation of what happened with the Scythians. That therefore the Germans and the Hungarians kept them from being able to come in to these different regions, and then held them back like a dam, as the Hungarians and the Poles did against the Tartars. Okay, so let's stop. And back, this is the irony that those people did that, but the Russians were conquered by the Tartars, right? That's the Rus, the Moscovia Rus, were conquered by the Tartars. Why? Because the Poles and the Hungarians had warlike arms, virtue. Okay, that's a good, interesting point. Machiavelli implies but not says, and he doesn't speak of the Rus. It's not talked about, but he talks about the Tartars. So let's stop here. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below. If you have any comments, questions, or things you want to raise and discuss, I think you want to ask me about this section, please do it here. Like it, hit the like button. If you liked it, share it. Share it on social media. Share it with your friends. Share it on your emails to people that they think would be interested in this. Share it far and wide. And if you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Now, commenting, liking, sharing, and subscribing, all of this helps build the algorithm up of the videos. Because why? It helps if people searching for something on, let's say, Machiavelli's Discourses. Well, as more people do that, the algorithm will push this video up and the similar videos up, and people will just come to find this by the search. Otherwise, you getting more people to come here by pushing people to come here helps improve the algorithm as well. So please do the word of mouth and spread it about. If you've not subscribed, check out the other channel. Check the rest of the things under the playlist. Check the two versions of the Prince. We've read the reading of the Prince. We went through twice already. The Aristotle's Politics, the Aristotle's Ethics, Thucydides' Peloponnesian War, Montesquieu's Spirit of the Laws, Rousseau's Social Contract, Locke's Second Treatise on Government, and the like. Okay, go check it out. The channel is filled with Schmidt stuff and things like that, and the playlists are there. So go check it out, and I hope you'd like it. Another way you can do this, or you can want to follow me on social media. The social media links are below. If you want to know more about me as a researcher and as a scholar and as an academic, you can look at the academic social media links below the social media links. You want to go check out my scholarship and things like that, that's where you'd go. Another thing you can do is you want to help me do what I do. You want to contribute, you want to financially contribute to this thing, you can do so through Patreon or Subscribestar. Any contribution helps in that sense. Another way you can help is by buying one of my books. If you don't already own it, or you're coming to the channel and you don't know me, you can buy one of my books. You can buy the hardcover books. You can do that at your local bookstore. Maybe you're lucky. Maybe you can get them to order it. Of course, support your local bookstores. But if your book can't order for you, won't order for you, whatever, has difficulties, then you can go to an online distributor. Or maybe you just want to go to an online distributor, okay? You don't necessarily like the owner of the bookstore, okay? I prefer people, it'd be good that people would help their local businesses, but, maybe, and it might be just too much of a problem to do so. So therefore, go to online distributors like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Book Depository, Libris, whatever. Or go directly to the publisher. And the ebook, there's an ebook below that is the ebook. It says EPUB. This is available on Kindle, Apple Books, and places like that. All the distributors, or you can go to the Lulu, the publisher's website. That's linked in there below. I give the link to the publisher's website. With that, we look in the next chapter, and I hope you have. See you next time, and we'll turn next to, I think, chapter 9. So take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.